am Ashada.
And I'm Diara.
And welcome to Nationwide, where young voices shape the conversation.
From social issues to politics,
crime to careers,
mental health to personal growth,
we're tackling the topics that matter to you.
No sugarcoating,
just real, unfiltered conversations
with the next generation. Welcome back to another episode of the Nationwide podcast. This episode, we're changing things a little bit up. It's going to be a spicy episode, and we're talking about sex education, sex health, and different misconceptions about sex today. I am Diara Springer.
And I am Ashada Joseph. And today we have with us a very special guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself in a bit, but she's going to shed some light, as Diara said, on sex education as it relates to young people.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I'm Dr. Tiffany Jordan from the BFPA, and I'm excited to have this discussion with Diara and Ashada.
Welcome to the show, Dr. Jordan.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get right into it. What is sex education, or what should it entail?
Well, sex education is essentially education about just that, sexual health. It can include things like the anatomy of the sexual organs in both men and women, different types of sexual conditions or infections that can occur, how to prevent them, contraception methods, and the different options that are available and how to choose, when to use them, etc. So it's a comprehensive topic, basically about all things related to sexual health and prevention of sexually related diseases and conditions.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some of the things that, we as a society don't fully address when it comes to sex education?
Well, that's a good question. I think we probably don't address sexual education in youth enough, which is why I guess we're having this discussion here. I think in our society, which is still relatively conservative, persons tend to shy away from having these types of discussions surrounding sexual matters with youth, because they fear that it might get young people involved in sex and things of a sexual nature at an earlier age than they would like. So I think that it's something that we could do better on, and I think it's something that the powers that be have recognized in recent times and are putting things in place to improve.
Now, you mentioned just now that, sex conversations may be difficult to have with young people, but then in the Caribbean, it is difficult among parents to have that conversation with their children. So how do you think parents can introduce the topic of sex to their children in a way that both persons are comfortable with having that conversation?
I think that it has to start at an early age. People tend to think of it as a conversation that you would have maybe in later adolescent years, where you sit them down in a room for an hour or so and then you just let everything out to the bag all at once. But really and truly, it should start from the time they're like 3, from the time that they're able to have a conversation and understand what you're saying. And it can begin with small things like telling them the proper names for their body parts, and giving them the proper names for those functions, explaining to them, what's inappropriate touching, and, when to come and say something if somebody touches them in an inappropriate place. And I think that parents should try to practice throughout the child's life at a very early age, being approachable, being askable, so that the child feels secure in coming to them and asking them questions of any nature, really. And they need to ensure that they have the type of response that would make them approachable, especially into adolescent years. They can start in terms of the more, as you put it, spicy conversations, through, what's the word, through things as like, when you're just sitting down watching television together, and things come up on the TV or ads or in songs, or maybe there, it be something in the newspaper related to some sexual or sexuality topic. They can raise the conversations with the children then, and have a discussion on what their child's perspective is, what they know about the topic. They can fill in the gaps and give them any information that might be necessary, especially if they have wrong views or information. And it's also a great time for them to basically teach their children what their own values are on the topic. So I think that that could be how parents approach it. And it can be a conversation that occurs over a period of years as a child develops at different stages. So it doesn't have to be a one-time conversation and then you never speak about it again. But it can be something that's ongoing. And even into, even past the age of 18, if you have a good rapport with your child in their 20s, they may come back to you to ask questions and to get your advice on certain issues that they may be facing with their partner, or with their sexual health.
Yeah. Dr. Jordan, you said that, you believe that sex education should start from a young age. And I really love that you said that, because sometimes when I'm passing school age children, secondary, primary, I hear the wildest things ever as it relates to sex. It's really shocking. And I think that when, the more formal institutions such as school and parents don't address the topic of sex, then that makes the children more prone to, learning a lot of disinformation. And that's what we want to get into now, the disinformation and misinformation surrounding sex. So there are a lot of misconceptions. I've heard raw is law.
Okay.
I've heard that a lot. And the pulling out method. So what are your thoughts on those kind of misconceptions?
Well, I've never heard of the phrase raw is law, but I would say it's a law that people should break, because it results in a lot of unfortunate events for young people. And for example, unwanted pregnancies, STIs, and I think there's a certain measure of what's the term? Peace of mind that people can get when they know that they're practicing safe sex. So wearing a condom, getting tested yourself and getting your partner tested are really some of the best ways to practice safe sex, because your partner is not going to be able to transmit anything to you that they don't have. So if they're tested and treated, then you can know in your mind that you're practicing safe sex with this person. With regards to the pull-out method, is very unreliable. 1 out of 5 women will get pregnant within a year of practicing sex using that method. The reason is that during sexual intercourse, there is pre-ejaculate fluid that can be produced from the male partner, and that may contain enough sperm to fertilize an egg and cause a pregnancy. So it's really not a reliable method. And women, if they're using that method, they should also look to use something else along with it. And there's lots of great contraception methods that are available currently. And so I think that young women should seek to use something that's more reliable.
And what are these reliable methods of contraception that young people can use?
So when persons are presenting for contraception, couples or young women, we try to give them methods that suit where they are at their particular point in life. Many young people are studying or hoping to pursue a career path, and that time in life may not be the best to conceive and take care of a child, especially financially wise. So we recommend long-term methods that are reversible, that would allow the woman a lot of time to basically pursue all of these other things, life goals that she may have, and then plan her pregnancies after after those goals have been met and she's ready. So for example, things like the intrauterine contraception device or the implant, the implant is like 3 years of contraception. It's a small rod that is inserted into the upper arm, and it lasts for 3 years. And the IUD or intrauterine contraception device, is a T-shaped device that's inserted into the uterus, and it can stay there for up to 8 to 10 years. And it can be removed at any point if she changes her mind. It's not a 10-year commitment per se, but it can be removed earlier whenever the woman is ready to start her family. And those methods are safe and they're very reliable. Less than 1 out of 100 women using that method will be pregnant within a year. Less than 1.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas with something like the pull-out method, it's like 22 out of 100 women. And even condoms, even though they're great for protecting persons against STIs, they still have a higher failure rate. Around the same 20 out of 100 women may become pregnant if they're not using condoms correctly.
Just now, when you were speaking of the different methods of contraception, I realized that the focus was more so on the women. But is there anything that the men can do when it comes to contraceptives?
I would say, unfortunately, most contraception methods are targeted towards women, other than condoms and sterilization, which is what people would call the tie-off or the vasectomy. So for that, obviously would not be a good option for a young man who's still within his reproductive years and wants to start his family. So currently speaking, condoms are the mainstay for men. So most contraception is targeting women, but men are still a part of the relationship, right, and the conversation, and they can attend along with their partner to find out what's the best contraception method that might work for them as a couple.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Jordan, you were speaking just now about, the consequences of having sex. You could become pregnant. So I want to kind of shift the focus on STIs. What are some of the symptoms of STIs that persons tend to ignore?
Well, when it comes to symptoms that persons ignore, I would say it's very rare. Usually, once a person has an STI symptom, they will get themselves to the doctor quickly if they're having any of those symptoms, like burning when you pass water, pelvic pain, testicular pain, a discharge from either the penis or vaginal canal, with the abnormal color or odor. People usually get to the doctor quite quickly when they see those symptoms. But there's some types of STIs where the symptoms are more insidious. So for example, with primary syphilis, you can get a bump, right, which can be on the genital area that looks like a hair bump, or just like maybe a cut from shaving or something like that. They might not think that it's STI related and may not do anything about it because it tends to be painless. But in most cases, once a person is symptomatic, I find that they tend to come into the doctor. But I'd like to say that there are quite a number of people who may have STIs but not have any symptoms. So, for example, in the case of chlamydia, I think up to 50% of women may not have symptoms. And for gonorrhea, up to 80% of women may not have any symptoms. So it's best, once you're sexually active, to just get tested at least annually. Because if there's something there, you'll be able to pick it up before it starts to cause a problem.
So what are some resources then for persons who think that they have an STD? STI, sorry.
In Barbados, there is lots of free STI clinics at all of the polyclinics. You can walk in, you can see a GP and get tested. I know for sure Winston Scott Polyclinic has a dedicated STI clinic for sure, where persons can get tested for all STIs. And clinics like the BFPA, I think there's Equals Inc. Barbados, and at any private GP really, testing can be offered.
So then what advice would you have for any person who has an STI or STD but is, I guess, ashamed or kind of hesitant to go forward to get that help?
I would say put your health first. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma surrounding STI testing in Barbados, but the reality is that sexual health is part of general health, right? The same way that you would go to an eye doctor if you have issues seeing, or you would go to maybe an orthopedic doctor if you have issues with your knees. Sexual health is a part of life and a part of health, and people need to see it that way. And if they have an issue, there's no shame in presenting and getting themselves the necessary treatment and information about what it is that they're experiencing is perfectly normal part of life.
Well, just know you mentioned a stigma being attached to sexual education. So how can we as Barbadians break that stigma where we can have conversations about it, educate people, and, to encourage more persons to get tested and put their health first?
Probably by having more conversations about sexual health, and also by helping the generations that are coming up through having comprehensive sexual health education available in schools, which is age appropriate, of course. And I think that will help to change the mindset of people. If it's something that is built into the curriculum at school, and or say, when you're leaving school, there's even special classes dedicated to those who are outgoing, because they're going to be approaching the age of 16, which is the legal age at which persons can become sexually active. If you have something built into the curriculum that prepares individuals for when they're leaving, I think that will help to decrease some of the stigma surrounding it. If it just becomes something that is a normal part of life and seen that way.
What advice we have for the youth today as it relates to sexual education?
What advice would I have for the youth? Well, the youth do not spearhead their own sexual education currently. I think it's something that is taught to them at various points in school, and based on how it's taught, that is how they develop the perception of how it's put over to them. As you age, you become more responsible for those aspects of your life, and there's lots of great resources available to strengthen your knowledge and deepen your knowledge on sexual health and sexual matters. And there's lots of great resources like the CDC, for example. cdc.gov/STD is a great resource to learn about sexual health and STIs and STI prevention. There's other websites featured through the WHO, the World Health Organization. I think those are the ones I can think of, the official ones I can think of right now, that offer a wealth of information and audiovisual media on sexual health. So those are some things people can do, and it's really important that persons get accurate information, because as you opened by saying, there's a lot of misconceptions that you would hear amongst young people, and a lot of it sometimes can be fueled by consumption of the wrong types of media. There are certain types of music and television shows that would promote these types of misconceptions, and young people consume a lot of that, unfortunately. And I think that there needs to be a shift in the type of information that they're consuming as it relates to sexual health.
All right. Dr. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us here at the Nationwide Podcast. It was a pleasure having you, and we hope that this conversation could be a stepping stone, really, for more comprehensive sex education for our young people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all our viewers for tuning in to another episode of Nationwide. I am Diara Springer.
I am Ashada and Diara.
And we'll see you next time.